Most advice out there will tell you that your family is toxic, to walk away, to burn the bridges. But the truth is that spiritual, educated, first or second generation immigrant women like us, we understand that just because our family has different opinions than us does not mean that they're toxic. And we love our families. We don't want to burn the bridges and walk away every single time. So today we're talking about how to set boundaries with your family using feminine energy without having to disown them. So today we're talking about how to detach from your family without disowning them using feminine energy. Many years ago, I was at a shopping event and a young lady came up to me and she said, Mina, I follow you on YouTube and your videos have completely changed my life. And she shared her story of being a second generation immigrant, meaning her parents were from Asia and they had moved here and they had a lot of traditional values. And now that she was in her late 20s, they had a lot of opinions about what she should do with her life. And so she was experiencing a lot of just disagreements with them, and she started watching content online and sharing some of this stuff with her non-Asian, non-immigrant friends, and every single person was telling her, cut your family off, your family is so toxic, I can't believe they said that to you. And she found herself going into like a very negative spiral, and the more she watched this type of content, or the more she got this advice that her family was toxic, the worse the situation with her parents became, until she found my content. She said watching my content made her realize that her parents were just from a different world and they were in a lot of fear. They were in a lot of survival, as a lot of immigrant parents are. And so they were trying to quote unquote control her to make sure that she was safe. And when she understood that they just had a different perspective and approached the same conversations that she was having with them with a completely different viewpoint, completely different perspective, and a completely different energy, they started shifting, they started understanding. She started listening to them to understand what their fears were. And at the end of the day, this didn't mean that they still agreed with everything she was doing, but now they weren't fighting and they started meeting in the middle and understanding each other. You don't have to immediately call people names or cut them off. There is so many middle grounds. Now, before I get into sharing 3 secrets with you that are completely going to change your mind, make sure that you stay until the end, because I'm going to be sharing with you, well, what happens when they actually are toxic, because I know sometimes people are just really toxic. And so I'm going to share with you how I approach that in my own life, how I really gauge what's really toxic versus what's just a different perspective. So make sure you stay until the end. Okay, so secret number 1, detachment is energetic, not physical. If you have aunts, uncles, parents, cousins, siblings that you don't get along with because they judge what you're doing, they have different opinions about what you should be doing, there could be many reasons for this. Sometimes it's fear. A lot of our family members, especially if they're first gen immigrants, they have a lot of fear. They got here in survival, right? A lot of times. And so they have so many different fears. Like, for example, my parents, their biggest fear was that we were going to become too Americanized and forget our culture. So when I understood, oh, that's what they're afraid of, right? I understood they're not attacking me. They're just worried that their culture will be lost. So there could be so many reasons. It could be just different perspectives. It could be jealousy or envy. It could be fear. It could be their own limiting beliefs. And so we don't want to just jump to conclusions. What you want to do is be able to pause in those situations and take a deep breath. This does require you to learn nervous system regulation techniques, and not nervous system just to get to base level survival. I have an entire course called Prosperity Pathways, which I'll link in the description box for you. A lot of nervous system work is catered to people that are more therapy clients, which nothing wrong with that, but I'm a life coach, and so I want to teach you how to be in an energy of abundance, not just survival. Once you learn these techniques, your energy will be more open when you are met with resistance or met with people that have different opinions than you. One thing that I've done in my own life is, when triggering topics come up, which I know that I and another family member might have an opposing or different viewpoint, I either steer the conversation in a different direction, or I'll try to learn their perspective and then find at least one point of an agreement. One point of agreement might be, after I learn why they're saying this. Why do they believe this? Everyone has their own reasons for believing things. I might say, ah, that makes so much sense from that perspective. I might say, thank you for sharing that with me. I can see why you would believe that. And this is actually the first step to actually meta updating someone and helping them meet in the middle. When you show people respect for what they believe without feeling immediately defensive or attacked, it's so much easier to start like meeting in the middle, so to speak, where it's like, oh, okay, we can agree to disagree kind of thing. Like, I see your perspective and I can see why you would feel that way. And then you don't have to change your behavior necessarily, right? You can just practice energetic detachment. The number two secret is shift your perspective, not people. And what I mean by that is that we think we have to change people's mind, or we have to change our behavior, or we have to cut people off. There's so many more options than this, right? So when you start realizing that everyone has their own movie, and they see the world as them being the main character and you being a supporting role. So, for example, from your mother's perspective, she's the main character of her movie and you are her child, right? Even though you're an adult now, you are her child. So in your movie, you're the main character and she just plays the role of being your mother. And so we all have to learn in healthy relationships how to not only play the main character role in your own movie, but also learn to play all of these supporting roles. So for example, as Mina Irfan, I am the main character of my movie, right? But I'm also the supporting role in my husband's movie. And I also am the supporting role in my kids' movie. And I'm also the supporting role in my friends' movies. And I'm also the supporting role in my clients' movies. So that's what healthy relationships are all about, is being able to play all of these different roles in a way that's respectful from everyone's point of view. Now, for this secret, I actually want to share something else with you that's really interesting. One thing I've learned in my life is even if someone's giving me advice that doesn't make sense to me right now, it doesn't mean it's wrong. I have the best example of this. So at 44 years old, I still have days where I'm like, oh my God, that's what my parents meant. It totally makes sense now, except they told me that piece of advice when I was maybe 20 or 16, and I did not want to hear it. And it did not make sense. I felt attacked. I felt like they were outdated. I felt like they didn't understand me. And now, 20, 30 years later, from when they told me that thing, I'm like, oh, they were right. And they're gone now. So a lot of times, it's just different perspectives, and that advice is being given for the future. This has helped me so much as a parent, because when I give my children advice, they don't have to take it right now, because I understand that they might need that piece of advice when they're 50. They might need that piece of advice when they're parents themselves. And so I'm not expecting them to get it right now. I'm not expecting them to do something with it right now. And I've actually taught my children this as well, that everything that you hear, every book you read, everything your teacher says, everything I say, it might make sense in the future. It might never make sense, but it might also make sense in the future. And so just because someone has a different opinion than you, or the advice just doesn't land right now, doesn't mean it's not valuable. And so we don't want to get into just instantly thinking that they're attacking us or they're lecturing us. Um, Third thing, I learned just from my own life experience that a lot of times my parents gave me really, 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 really amazing life advice. But the reason I didn't take that advice is because they were not living that advice. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't good advice. It was genius advice. But because they weren't embodied in it, I devalued it. So, how I've used that in my life is I always fact checked myself. I'm like, okay, I'm about to say this to my kids. Am I embodying this? Because me embodying it and role modeling it is so much more useful to my children than just words coming out of my mouth. Now, there have been things that I've shared with my kids where I'm not embodying it, but I always preface it. I always say, I'm not really the best role model in this thing. However, I have learned this in my life and I'm trying to get better at this. So they know, okay, like she knows that she's not the best at this thing, but there must be a reason. And I do credit, like, this is one of my most prized things in my life, I live for this, is the fact that even my all three of my kids, but especially my adult child, he still calls me and wants advice from me. He wants to run things by me and my husband, and we take that really as sacred, because we have friends that complain about how their adult children don't want to listen to what they're saying. And so that doesn't mean that he, takes our advice every time. We just appreciate that he can at least come to us and wants to hear us. And the reason for this is because even when we disagree with him, we're able to communicate it in a respectful way, understanding that he is an adult now. By the way, he turns 21 next month. Like, oh my God, where did the freaking time go? And this is like important to me because I want to have a forever relationship with my children, and I want to make sure that I'm respecting their own decisions. Another thing as a parent I like to remember is that I learned a lot of my lessons by making mistakes. And so they're allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to be here for them, and they're allowed to make their mistakes. So controlling them isn't isn't the thing, right? Like, I can give them my viewpoint. This is what I would do in this situation, or this is what I've lived. This is what I've learned in my life experience. But that doesn't mean I'm trying to like control their life. And that's hard. Let me tell you, as a parent, it is so hard. And so if you are in that role where your parents are disagreeing with you or they're freaking out over your choices, like, I just want to offer you a different perspective as a mother of an adult child who's now third generation, American, Pakistani American. It's hard watching your kids make decisions that you might not agree with and being able to love them through that. And so understand that, that doesn't mean, they hate you. That doesn't mean you should hate them. It's just a different perspective. Okay, so secret number 3 is build boundaries without burning bridges. Okay, and how you do this is you want to energetically detach from the meaning that you're assigning to what they're saying. So for example, if your parents or siblings say something, a lot of times we immediately go into, they don't love us, they think we're stupid. Like, we start assigning meanings to it. They think I'm not capable, whatever the thing is that you're assigning. But that might not be true. They're just voicing their opinion, right? Or their fear. They might have fear for you because they might not be feeling capable of that thing, right? They might have limiting beliefs about that thing. In any relationship, you're not only managing your own nervous system, but like, you have to deal with other people's nervous systems. And a lot of people think that they can just burn all bridges with all family and then like have a happily ever after with their loved one. But if you've never learned to be able to sit through difficult conversations, opposing viewpoints, all of these things, that is going to come up with in your marriage. And that is definitely going to come up with relatives of your family member, of your partner, of your children. And so you need to be able to regulate and calm your nervous system in the experience of people not agreeing with you without taking it personally. And so the biggest thing you can do is have energetic boundaries. And how I have energetic boundaries is making sure that I'm aware of the meaning that I'm assigning, because that I can control. I cannot control someone else's viewpoints, but I can always control the meaning that I assign. And a lot of times when I pause and reflect, I realize, oh, I grew up being told that I'm stupid. And so every time someone says something that's a different opinion, people are allowed to have different opinions, right? My inner child goes into, oh, they think I'm stupid. No, they don't think that. What they think is a different opinion, right? They have a different way of viewing the life. And so now I'm able to reframe that and reframe it and also learn, well, why do they believe this? If I'm curious, right? And with family members, I am curious. What made them arrive at that conclusion? Was it a limiting belief? Was it a life experience? And then I stay curious because, like I said with my parents' example, 20 years later, I might arrive to a point where I'm like, oh, that's what they meant. And now it makes sense because now my consciousness has changed, or that situation has now appeared in my life where that exact thing makes sense. So we don't immediately need to even like communicate. Like, a lot of people go into being nasty with how they're communicating with their boundaries. I don't even communicate my boundaries 99.9% of the time. How this is played out in my life is I had extended family members. Of course, I shared this with in my Pakistani American video, that when you are the bridge of two cultures, especially first gen, like I was first generation born here from both sides of the family. So of course, a lot of people had fear for me that I was going to be too Americanized, that I wasn't going to understand the traditional culture. And so I'm literally the bridge between the two cultures. And what's happened was I didn't disagree with them. I agreed with where I could agree. For example, I shared in that video that if they would say, as a Pakistani woman, you shouldn't wear sleeveless clothes, and I would respond with, you're right. Because from their perspective, that is true. Okay, not a lot of people wear, well, wealthy people do. It depends on how liberal you are. But they're right, especially when I was little younger. Right now, things are changing in Pakistan, but from their perspective, they are 1000% correct. So it doesn't make sense to feel attacked. It doesn't make sense to disagree with them. They're actually right. But I would continue doing what I wanted to do. Now, sometimes I wouldn't wear those clothes if I was visiting them. And eventually what happened is I visited those particular extended family members less and less, and then I moved out of state, and we kind of just grew apart. That doesn't mean I hate them. That doesn't mean they hate me. In fact, we call each other when there's a family loss or there's a birth. If I meet them again, I would meet them as if nothing was wrong and we left off wherever we were. We didn't burn bridges. It was just kind of, they got busy with their life, I got busy with my life, and it's like a natural falling away. I believe that with certain people, you can gracefully move away, but it doesn't have to involve drama. That's what causes a lot of suffering, is when there's a lot of drama involved. And so you can slowly let relationships fall away just because your energy and your focus is somewhere else. But that doesn't mean it's like full of drama. In fact, if you spoke to them, they're not going to be like, oh, we hate Mina and no, it's just like, oh, we had kids and we got busy and then she moved away. Like, that's just how it is. Okay, just, you can let it naturally happen that way. Another thing I want to say is, this is not so true for immigrant families as it is for Western families, but I just want to mention this, that I read somewhere that 70% of the time that you're going to spend with your kids, it's going to be under 18, right? Because usually in the Western culture, kids move away at 18. And if you have first gen like immigrant parents, even if you didn't move away at 18, you got busy, right? You started college, you had jobs, you were starting doing other things, and just understanding that a lot of these relationships change and evolve over time anyways. And so there's no point of cutting people off and living in regret. I have another example I want to share with you. So with my parents, they both had healthy family members and they both had what would be considered toxic family members, right? My mom never cut anyone off. She just would get busy, focused on other things. But if they called her, like, she was 100% there. She never cut anyone off. My dad was very quick at cutting everyone off. And guess who lived with a lot of regret? My dad. There was a lot of regret because, with my mom, even though it's the same situation, she still had toxic family members. They took advantage of her. She did energetically kind of distance herself, even though she continued to help them wherever she could. She didn't live in regret because she felt like she did right by those people, even if they felt like she hasn't done enough. She felt like she did right. Whereas what I saw with my dad was there was a lot of regret. Even when my dad passed away and some of his relatives that he hadn't seen in years, you should have seen them at the funeral. Like, they were quite upset. Like, there was a lot of regret. And what I've learned from this experience is life is short. You never know how much life someone has. You never know what life will throw your way or their way, or maybe you're gonna move away, or what's gonna happen. And so you can energetically definitely have boundaries, and it's okay to be focused in other directions, but causing unnecessary drama, cutting people off, saying mean things that you can't take back, I don't recommend it. And I feel like from watching both of my parents, I've kind of taken the middle ground with people that are more difficult, because yeah, I know some family members can be toxic. So in the beginning, I promised you that I was going to talk about, well, what happens when they are actually toxic. So first and foremost, I made a video that triggered a lot of people years ago where I talked about how I judge someone as truly toxic. And my personal definition, this triggered a lot of people in that video, but I'm gonna repeat it because I still agree with that. If I feel like someone's a toxic person in my life, but they have other healthy relationships, then I remove the toxic label, because that means they're not generally toxic. There's something about my dynamic with that person that's causing toxicity. I can't say that word. That's causing us to be toxic. And this is a weird example, but for example, there's cleaning products that cannot be used together. I'm forgetting, I'm blanking out on the name. Is it ammonia? I don't know. I know that there's cleaning products that you can, on their own, they're perfectly fine to use. But if you combine them with another cleaning product with another chemical in it, you can have what's called like a chemical pneumonia or something like that, where it's like you would have to go to the hospital. And that's the best example of this, is that those people are not toxic because they have other healthy relationships, but there's something about them and me that doesn't mix together. And so that means that I'm not gonna go around publicly, ruining their reputation or calling them names. It's just like, oh, for some reason, we're like two cleaning products that cannot be used together. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing is, if I have strong reason to believe that a family member, a friend is harmful to my children, then I will cut them off. Now, even in those situations where I have done that, it wasn't a lot of drama. I'll be honest with you. I feel like you can cut people energetically off. You can set boundaries without drama. It was, maybe there was a little bit in a couple situations where in the beginning at least, because they were like, well, why can't we have access to your kids? And it was like, you just can't. Okay. And we might have tried to reason with them why, and then they weren't understanding or agreeing, and it was like, you just can't. So there is a way to set limitations and boundaries, especially for your minor children. You control who can be in their life and who's not. And I wouldn't do this just out of different opinions or out of spite or anything like that. I would never do that to punish someone in that way. But if I have strong reason to believe that this person is going to be harmful to my children, then I will cut them off. Even if momentarily there is a little bit of drama, I will cut them off, because in the long run, as a parent, I am responsible to ensuring my children's safety. So that is one of the exceptions that I do make to that. I'm an adult, like, they can say or do anything to me. It's not a big problem. I understand that people have different nervous systems and different opinions, but with minor children, you do have to be careful. So that is how I would deal with that situation. I just want to make a couple of two announcements. Desires, Dollars, and Divine Union after party is happening tomorrow, September 3rd. So if you're in that class, log into the portal and get that Zoom link. And there will be also an email sent an hour before the class if you're on our email list. If you haven't signed up for that, I highly recommend. The pregame on Shameless is mind-blowing, and then there's a 3-part masterclass series, and then the after party. And you get to have the replays of that too if you're watching this later on. Also, Addicted to Abundance, my 3-day in-person event, is happening in Houston, Texas in January 2026, and tickets are on pre-order right now, so you want to grab your seat, and I would love to have you in person. I love you so much. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, what you would like to see next, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.